Welcome back to I Am African podcast. I'm really excited, but before we get there, I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves. So I'm gonna go with the only man on this episode. So we're gonna go with Philip.
Okay, hi, my name is Philip. I'm a Nigerian,
Hmm.
authentic Nigerian, the giant of Africa. You know what that means? So yeah, proudly. Yes, I think this is my second time on this podcast. So yeah, it's gonna be
Think or
interesting.
let me
I
stop
know,
interrupting.
I know, it's okay. You guys are coming for me, but I'm ready.
Oh. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much, Philip. It's really good to have you back again. We'll skip over and we're gonna go to Gracie.
Hi guys, my name is Gracie. I'm from the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic du Congo,
Hey.
in the village called
You don't have to say it
Lubumbashi.
twice to recognize the country, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to have you here, and I can't wait to hear you and your opinions on this topic. But anyways, we're gonna skip over to the Madame Kamsi. Introduce yourself.
Kamsi. I'm Nigerian, like Philip, the giant of Africa. No shade, Liz, but it is what it is.
Do you guys realize that this is my podcast and I'm not Nigerian? We'll shift focus to today's topic, and that is dating while African, cultural practices and family expectations. So our main subtopic is how cultural expectations shape African dating practices. So we're going to look at like how families view dating, including arranged marriages, dating practices, and of course, family involvement. Because as an African, you cannot date without your family getting involved. And so now my question for today for this guest is, how did your family react to your dating choices? And how does that affect your dating choices and experience?
Well, personally, coming from a traditional African home, dating as an African is something that they believe that should happen at the right time. I wouldn't even say dating. There's no such thing as dating as an African. In an
Yeah.
African, it's an African home. I think they believe two stages. You see someone that you like. If it's not going to be arranged marriage, if you have the freedom of even choosing someone you're going to marry, if it's not arranged marriage, see somebody you like, then the next stage is making your intentions known to marry the person straight up.
Very
So
much
there's no
so.
point, there's no dating in African home. So that's how it's seen. So you associating yourself with somebody you're not married to, it's seen like you're doing something bad. So yeah,
Abomination.
it's an abomination. So it's not allowed in a typical African home. Yeah, but things have changed. Families have evolved due to education and we embracing the Western culture. So yeah, but we still have those sentiments still. So there are some things we can do, no matter how you. It's just like no matter how you love your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you can't be seen in the presence of your family hugging or kissing. You can't do that. You'll be in trouble. So yeah, I think I'll have more to say. Let me allow the rest to touch light.
Ladies, do you have a response? Because I'll have a response to what Philip said, but I'll let you guys go ahead and talk. Come see.
I think largely I agree with what Philip said. There's nothing like dating, truly. It doesn't exist. And unfortunately, if you start dating, parents, at least my parents, wanted me to introduce my boyfriend at the stage of, well, this is somebody I want to get married to. So yeah, there's nothing like dating. So I don't really know how, in your mind, how you get to marry someone if you don't actually date, and how you know if this is somebody you want to get married to if you don't explore and find out. So I agree with Philip.
Okay,
I agree with
Gracie.
the both of them.
Okay.
I agree with the both of them. First and foremost, I was not allowed to date. So just like she said, the moment you even think you want the person, you have to introduce them as a fiance. To be clear, as a fiance, not a girlfriend or boyfriend. I remember one time speaking to my dad, and I was like, so, like, what is the process of, marriage and things like that? Because I was just curious. And then he was like, yeah, once you find your person, you come and talk to us and introduce them as fiance. And I was like, Dad, but like, I want them to become my boyfriend first. He said, huh? What do you say? Boy who? And then so basically there's no dating period. They strictly want you to introduce somebody you as as if they're your fiance, and after that obviously it's marriage. So
Hmm.
that was I wasn't allowed to date. So the person that I dated is the person that I married. So I can't really tell you guys my
I'm glad you're able to share that. I'm glad you got to a point where like, oh, married.
person the person that I had my eyes on, or the person that had their eyes on me, the moment they step in front of my parents, we're automatically fiancés.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then after that is marriage. So that's the only person I know. So I can't really tell y'all that, I've dated around or anything like that. Because I wasn't allowed.
That's very interesting. Okay. So there are a few things I wrote down. So I think we're going to go backwards because when what Philip said is something that I wanted to address first, but I think we're going to end up there. And a lot of you said that like there is no such thing as dating, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is both in Africa as the continent itself. When your families were there, there's no definition of boyfriend. There's only two things, wife and husband. Those are the recognized terms for people who have partners or any type of relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you come to the Western world, even though things are relaxed, it doesn't look like any of you have had the freedom of changing that aspect, because even if you date people, you still have to think about the fact that is this someone that I have to go and introduce to my family? Is this someone that like I need to get married to? So does that affect the number of people that you enter into a relationship with, or like the number of people you date? How does that define who you are?
I think that's an interesting question. It depends on the purpose of dating. I think there's some people that date with intention.
Mm-hmm.
If you're dating with intention, eventually you're going to have to introduce your partner to your parents.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
if you're just, having fun, then there isn't any need to introduce your parents. Up
Nope.
until date today, my parents call my boyfriend my friend. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you
yeah,
feel about that?
I was gonna say the same thing. Like when I introduced my girlfriend to my dad and my parents, she's the first person I've ever introduced to them. When I did, they spoke the first time. The next time my dad called, I spoke with him, and she was like, "Hi, how is your friend?" I'm like my friend. I let it pass, and I passed the phone. She spoke to my dad. After the third time, he was like, he noticed that she is always around me. Are you sure you guys are not? Are you guys are not together? Not together. I'm like, we are not living together. Yeah, those kind of cultural stuff setting immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever he wants to ask me about my girlfriend, he always say my friend.
Mm-hmm.
So as I am, one day I was like, Daddy, who is my friend? He said Kamsi. I'm like, Kamsi is not my friend. He was like, but you introduce her as. I'm like, Kamsi is my girlfriend. He was like, what's the difference? I'm like, I want you to acknowledge that she's my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
That made him uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
but I had to force that on him. So, it took him some time to, when he wants to, he'd rather go straight to ask me, how is Kamsi, than asking me, how is my
Your girlfriend.
girlfriend? So it's very uncomfortable for him. Even my mom, whenever he wants to ask about my girlfriend, like she will ask, how is her friend, rather than saying, how is my friend? So they're still uncomfortable with it, calling it, except, yeah.
Kamsi, you had something to say?
I think yes, definitely heavy on uncomfortable. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why the word girlfriend is uncomfortable, but it doesn't make me uncomfortable when my dad calls Philip my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoy making him uncomfortable, but I don't know why it makes him uncomfortable. I think maybe the idea of, especially as a girl, the
Mm-hmm.
idea of all the things that are attached to being a girlfriend, maybe that's something they're not ready to accept or want to even, allow ideas play in their minds. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, Philip was the first person that I fully introduced to my parents. But
Mm-hmm.
all through my dating life, since I was in secondary school, if I considered somebody my boyfriend, I told my parents about that. Were they happy? That is a different conversation.
You know what's funny? I feel like regardless of where you are in the whole continent of Africa, it's very few, there are very few countries that would say, okay, it's okay for this to happen. In one of the episodes, Growing Up African, we talked about how, like, one of the guests was from Senegal and how Senegal is a Muslim country, right?
Mm.
They're not allowed to date, they're not allowed to have sex before marriage, they're not allowed to have all this, right? And now you have, going back to this, you have a situation where you want to be honest with your family or with your parents about certain things that you, or
Yeah.
certain decisions you make in your life, right? But they're making it impossible for you to be honest by having these expectations, because some of them, they went, like, they met through arranged marriage, some of them they got to date, and then they ended up getting married. But why does it feel like it's taboo for people in our generation to introduce someone or to date? They don't even have, they've made it impossible to where they don't even have terms girlfriend, boyfriend. When you said girlfriend, they just hear, that's your female friend. Oh, yeah, yeah, that girl you're friends with. Oh, yeah, that boy you're friends with. They don't think like the two can be, this is the person I'm dating. They go together. They separate them in their head. And now they try to, like, make it impossible for you to even accept it yourself, like, oh, this is my boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yeah. No, Liz, you are right. I had a conversation with my dad and the youngest, I have two brothers. One is we're all dating.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought his girlfriend over to our house for Christmas. And I thought that was very sweet because they've been dating for 5 years. One would think that at some point she would want to meet our family, or at least my parents. That was a very complicated situation, as you can imagine. And I sat with my dad, and I was trying to explain to him that if this is somebody he's going to end up with, you have to get to know her. And you're not, spending every day with her. Christmas, like a weekend, Christmas weekend is a nice opportunity for you to actually ask her questions, get to know her personality, and see if she can actually join the family. And his response was, that's not how things are done. That he, as much as he would appreciate wanting to get to know her, that's just not things are done. If his kingsmen hear about it, they will laugh at him. So I feel like there's a balance between cultural expectations and trying
Traditions.
to, yeah, cultural expectations, traditions, and then wanting to actually get to know the partners. And I think, yeah.
I was dating an African American person for 4 years, and I introduced him to my parents. And he was not supposed to have been introduced because I know where I come from. I cannot introduce anyone to my family unless the person is ready to pay bride price. So then he dropped me off at home, and my dad went from the back of the house to the front. And while I go inside, so my dad saw him, he said hi. And then there was introduction there. And so my dad asked him, who are you? Liz's boyfriend. Okay. So my dad comes back inside. So who was that? Hey, God. I had to explain. Since then, it was always that your friend that showed up. And we came from the gym. So he was wearing like tank top, shorts. And hey, it was, oh, that your friend. He told my mom how I introduced him to a boy. He was dressed up. He was working out. So he looked like John Cena. Like he tried to make it as extreme as possible. Now he put me in an uncomfortable position now where I have to go back to the person who I didn't know what the future looked like. We were just having fun. We were kids doing whatever. And now I have to be like, oh, so in our culture, there's this. And this introduced a lot of problems because I have culture expectations, right? Coming from, like, as an African, as a Congolese person, I have expectations where you don't date, you introduce someone whenever you're ready to get married. But now looking back, right, if you guys are able to relate because you're African, you both know there's expectations with you people. Imagine dating someone who doesn't come from the same culture as you, and now you have to explain to them what your culture expectations are. Do you feel like that puts pressure on your relationship? Especially now you have to talk about your family not recognizing that person as your partner, but as your friend. Does that, like, put some kind of, like, strain on your
Of course.
relationship?
I think it does put pressure because you'd spend most of the relationship explaining yourself. That's what I think. You spend most of the relationship explaining yourself, explaining what your family is about. Let's say you bring the man or the woman into the house, and then I don't know, your mom is doing something that, cultural Or let's say they're cooking something like fufu. Then, oh babe, this is fufu. Eat it like this, like that. Okay. And then the next time you have to explain something else. I feel like it puts a lot of pressure and just I don't know if I should call it pressure. Pressure. It's just too much. It's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about the rest of y'all.
Well, I'm going to differ. I don't think you should put pressure, or I don't think you should put a strain in the relationship. Personally, I don't know how people view dating and relationship. Dating and relationship, yes, there is an intention, there's emotion, and there's, intimacy, but it's still a form of friendship too.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a friend that wasn't raised in the same cultural environment that you were, you wouldn't feel pressure too, because at first you should be able to there's a point of you getting to know the person and the person getting to know you.
Mm-hmm.
So the onus is on you while you guys are getting to know each other to explain the differences.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am. This is how things are done. So I think the strength comes when you wait until the point of introduction to your family. The person will not experience the cultural shock.
Mm-hmm.
If you wait to that point before doing what you have to do, that's when you put in the pressure, and that's when you put in the strain in the relationship. I think while in the relationship, while the person, let's say your parents live in Chicago and you met someone in Houston and you guys are dating, it's on you. These are the kind of food I love. These are kind of the things we do. Introduce the person to your culture as the person is also introducing you to your culture. That's where people sync on things, so that when the person gets to meet the culture in a bigger scale, he wouldn't be shocked. That's when you know if the person is interested. Because the person is interested, if the person loves you enough, the person will be patient to understand you and move past some kind of things. In that, because you too, you're also learning the person's culture because you
Mm-hmm.
aren't raised in that way. So I don't think that should be a problem at all.
I
I wouldn't consider that at all,
I
personally.
have a okay. You said a lot of good things, a lot of right things. Yes, quite all right. Yes, you can introduce the person to the culture. Or let's say I'm, talking to, somebody that's not within my culture. I'll tell
Mm-hmm.
them like, hey, yeah, I'm from Congo. We do things here, we do things there. But I don't think from the little introduction they'll get to be comfortable in the bigger picture. You still have to explain yourself further whenever you come to, different things.
Mm-hmm.
You would explain yourself throughout the whole relationship. That's what I think. You tell them, okay, in the beginning, yes, hey, I'm African. I eat fufu. For us, for most of the African women, before you leave the house or the room, you have to shower before you go into the kitchen. So you explain those things, but then the more they get into it, the more questions they'll have. I
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
don't. Am I not making sense?
Yeah, you are.
You're making
Yeah,
sense, yeah?
Yeah, you are.
yeah. The
Kamsi?
little introduction you give them at the beginning, I don't think that's enough.
Yeah, so sorry, sorry. I know this is interesting. This conversation is going to take long.
See,
Those
how do you know
things.
I will agree with
No, I'm not saying you agree with me. I'm saying that your opinion, or your take on this
I guess you close the
question
combo.
is good. You can close the whole thing. So what I'm saying is this, right?
Okay.
I'm saying, let's say I meet someone I'm dating. I meet someone that is Caucasian, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
friend, or someone I want to date as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in a different world, because I'm locked in. So
Oh, Lord.
the different
You
world.
said in a different
So
world. Clarify.
yeah, definitely. So I have to, what is going to make us continue that? I need to know this person is willing to accept me fully, and I'm willing to accept the person fully.
Mm-hmm.
And that is shown by your openness to accept everything about me. I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean they will not have questions.
they will have
Sorry.
questions, but I'm just saying that shouldn't put a strain in the relationship or the pressure in the relationship.
Mm.
I'm saying you should handle it from step one. Don't wait till it gets to step 10 before you want to start bringing up those conversations. That's what I'm just trying to say.
Yeah.
So,
Don't
Okay,
you
so
think?
Okay,
Sorry.
Kamsi.
Gracie,
Don't you?
Gracie, let Kamsi go real quick because
okay.
I feel like we keep skipping.
Sorry. Because I'm
No,
trying to
it's
touch on the points that he's making. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I will state your point. I'll state both of your point. You're saying the same thing at a different timeline. But Kamsi, go.
I agree with Philip and Gracie. So without giving too much information, my brother is dating someone that's not Nigerian. In fact, she's not even African. She's Asian. my other brother is dating an Igbo girl, but that didn't even grow up in Nigeria. So she's more American than African. I think that it can put the culture shock or cultural expectations can put pressure on any partner. It can. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's now your responsibility to kind of coach them through, especially African cultural expectation, because there's a strictness or stubbornness or hard-headedness, especially with parents. So, yes, there can be pressure. What will alleviate that pressure is how your partner is coaching and supporting and making sure that you are not doing anything that will give your parents a bad impression of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an open-mindedness that your partner should have. If they are coming into a different culture, they should be open-minded. If the pressure that they're feeling starts to affect the relationship, then maybe it's a sign that long term may not be it may not last, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because like Gracie was saying, it never ends. It never ends. For example, my brother's African American girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
she comes to the house, or even my youngest brother, the Asian girl, when women are cooking in the kitchen, when women are gathered, generally, okay, there's an expectation that we are all contributing to the meal, like we're
Yes.
all cooking. This is something you have to communicate to your girlfriend, because I don't think naturally that's something somebody would think about, oh, let me go and help. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So in that scenario, in that situation, that's something your partner needs to communicate to the girlfriend that, look, in our culture, women find community in the kitchen, helping out. And if the girlfriend doesn't help out in the kitchen, can leave a bad impression. And, or if it's too much for her, if it's something that she starts having opinions, if starts having opinions about certain cultural expectations, that could also be problematic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
I
Philip, I've summarized.
I'm not the host. I'm not the host. I don't know. I don't know why this is coming to Philip.
But because this is what this happens when you have different opinions. So you feels like, but okay. So Kamsi, one thing that you said, I write down notes because I don't want to miss people's points. But one thing you said that having African parents or putting an expectations that African parents will be open minded, we just need to throw that in the trash because I think we are past the point where we can convince African parents to be open minded. They will be open minded when they get closer to death than to life. So we need to just throw away the fact that we should have expectations for them to be open minded. Second point you made about like, women and their family expectations, right? You said
Yeah,
something, all of you said something about how like there's going to be pressure in a relationship and you all saying it looking at like they said the partner, right? But you need to look at yourself first. Be like, okay, what is it that I can do to help that person to prevent those questions? If you can put yourself in a position, you explain the things, and then now you worry about the person's questions. Maybe that can like solve a little bit of problem. And that's where we lose. We don't like expect the questions. We
That's what I
don't.
was.
Yeah.
I sorry, I agreed with him, and I agreed with everybody. I believe your question was, do you think us being in a relationship with somebody that's not familiar with our culture puts pressure? I
On
mean, I
you.
guess different people on me. I guess different people will view it differently. But for me, I'm not sure if pressure is the right word, but I feel like you would have to explain yourself for a long time. You could say you can do the little intros in the beginning, but like she said, let's say you go to somebody's house. Philip probably forgot to mention to his Caucasian girl that, hey, when my sister is cooking, you're supposed to kind of, go and try and help out a little, or show something, or offer the help. You probably forget to say that in the beginning of the relationship. But as it's happening, hey, babe, when we do this, you're supposed to do this. You know what I mean? So it's
Mhm.
like you have to explain as the things happen too. Sorry for cutting you off.
No, there is going to be pressure because you have to, for everything that you have to do, there is no way you can sit down and say, okay, this is everything because you are not the opposite gender, right? For you,
Uh huh.
Philip, as a man, you know that, okay, there's times where like, oh, women need to be in the kitchen, like Kamsi said. women need to be in the kitchen or helping each other. But because you were a boy when you were raised, right? That you don't hear that, oh, women need to be in the kitchen all the time. You see it's happening, but it doesn't register in your head that that is a common thing that needs to happen. So you're not always going to remember to mention those kind of things to your partner, right?
Exactly.
When it's happening, that's when you say, oh my God, she's supposed to be in the kitchen. But at that point, it's too late because all the women in the kitchen are already looking in the living room.
And then if they're looking at you a certain way, now you're like, okay, why are they looking at me like that? So pressure is the right word.
No, no,
Philip?
no. You guys, I think you guys are making excuses for lack of communication in relationship. That's an excuse for lack of communication in relationship, because when you meet someone, yes, there's first physical attraction. Then after that, you guys get to know each other. And for you to get to the point you want to introduce someone to your family, you know your family more than anybody, and you know your partner more than anybody. The first person your partner is comfortable with is you. It happens to all of us when we go to a new location. Even if you know somebody that you're not really close to back at home. So just because you see that familiar face in a new location, naturally you are pushed towards the person. You feel much comfortable with the person. It comes naturally. So, and you knowing your family, you should be able to communicate to your partner that, hey, this is what you can see in my family. This is what you definitely see. This is what, at least you give your partner a heads up on some things.
Some things.
Then on some things, yeah, definitely on what you know definitely might. All things being equal,
Mm-hmm.
will throw them off or either not throw them off. Depends on it. And on your family side, you communicate to your family about your partner and what they should maybe expect, so that gracefully. I'm not going into engineering now, but there is some grace. You can gracefully bring things to a halt than forcefully bringing things to a halt. So what I'm saying is this: before I met my girlfriend's sibling, she told me about, hey, this my younger brother, he might be like this. I might expect something like this. This other one, in case he does like this, I should expect something like this.
Yeah.
And I have that in the back of my mind. So if something like that happens, I will not be surprised at what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I will expect that to happen. Though I'm of that nature. So I'm just saying, like, you shouldn't put a pressure on that, on this thing. Communicate better with your partner, and I'm not expecting them to absorb everything 100%, but
Mm-hmm.
not expect them to have a shock at the big stage. Start from scratch.
Okay, I have a quick question for Philip.
Yeah.
When you're dating someone, when you're getting to know someone, what type of questions do you ask the person, and what type of questions do you expect them to ask to know about you, especially like as an African?
The type of question, getting to know someone is not, sometimes the things we don't say most, our actions sometimes tells more about who we are. That's why I'm talking about being yourself. Like,
But how do you
personally,
get to the point where you communicate certain things about your family? Because when
you.
you get to know people, the timeline of like how long you meet someone, right? And when you
Mm-hmm.
introduce them to your family. Let's
Yeah.
say in an African household, right? You
Mm-hmm.
meet someone you're very serious about your girlfriend after you meet them for like a week or two. And you know that you can't date them. You have to introduce them to their family or introduce to their family, or they have to introduce you to their family. So now
Mm-hmm.
you have like, let's say, a month of getting to know each other before you go to the family and say, hey, this is my girlfriend, this is someone I'm going to marry, whatever, right? Now you have a month. In that month, what information are you going to share with that person about your family that will cover everything they need to know, to a point where they're never going to have questions?